Hey guys, I wanted to try something new today and share my personal journey in growing my accounting firm to over 15 full-time staff members and 40 clients, and really just tell the whole story of my career and how I got to posting content to an audience of over 400,000 people. So whether you're thinking of a career in finance and accounting, or if you want to just understand a little bit more about business, or maybe you've even seen my content and want to understand where I came from, well then this video, I'm going to go ahead and explain all of it. And I want to start first with me entering college, like so many people, not really realizing what they wanted to do with their life. And I knew that I was always good at math, but I wasn't 100% sure what exactly I wanted to major in. And this was right around the time, it was 2008 or so, where Lehman Brothers collapsed and there was this huge scare and downturn in the economy. And I'll never forget, my accounting professor was sitting on his desk and he was holding a newspaper. And he was saying, in good times, you'll need accountants, and in bad times, you'll need accountants. And I had grown up with parents who tried really hard, but faced challenges with their career stability. I really got to witness firsthand at how much of a strain it could put on a family. And that was probably the number one thing that I was looking for in a career, just job stability. And when I saw that accounting filled with numbers, I was good at math, provided really great job stability, I thought to myself, okay, maybe I should choose accounting as a major and kind of see where this goes. So I declared my accounting major. I was super stoked. And as time progressed, there were classes that I enjoyed and classes not so much that I enjoyed. I think audit was probably one of my least favorite accounting courses. And as time progressed, the doubt really started to creep in. And I started asking myself questions like, is accounting really the right path for me? And am I destined to be an accountant? I had this idea that anyone who has an accounting degree is glasses and carries around a briefcase with pants really high and everything. And I remember even friends coming to me and being like, Josh, why are you choosing a career like accounting? People always imagine that I would, do something in sales or entrepreneurial. And I remember I asked a few people for advice as I was declaring this accounting major and just hearing what their thoughts were. And two pieces of advice really stood out to me. One, a friend's brother who chose an accounting major and ultimately abandoned that and just went into his family business. I asked him what he thought, and he said, even though he didn't end up pursuing a career directly in accounting, his training and knowledge, everything that he learned on the path to become an accountant, had become really helpful for him in his business. And just understanding financial statements as a whole really added a lot of value to anything that he did in the rest of his life. And that really stood out to me. And, after all these years, I think that was really spot on. I think just understanding how to read financial statements are just so valuable. And even if you're not an accounting major, you should really understand how to read financial statements. I got tons of videos on that. I won't go into the details here. But another piece of advice that I got from someone, this is actually a career counselor in my school, she said, just because you major in accounting doesn't mean that you need to be an accountant. And once I heard that, I was like, okay, let's go ahead and let's give this a try. So I did everything that I could to get my grades as high as possible, trying to maximize my chances of success. And there are a few things in life as simple to me as schooling, where you're given exactly what you need to know. You're given a textbook, you can go to the teacher and ask for advice on what's going to be on the test. And it's just a matter of you putting in the time to actually study. Now, I think as you'll see as a theme with a lot of what I'm going to be speaking about in my journey, a lot of it has to do with where you are in your life. And specifically when I talk a little bit about the CPA exam, it was easier for me compared to a lot of other people because a lot of other people were already, they had a family, they maybe already had a job. For me, being in school, it was fairly easy. I just knew that that was my number one focus. But I made a mistake in making that my only focus. Now, I definitely took advantage of a lot of other areas in school. In fact, I joined every single extracurricular club. I even created a bunch of extracurricular clubs. I was part of the breakdancing club, the fencing club, the piano club, the gymnastics club. I just couldn't get enough of all of that. But the mistake that I made with trying to find a job, I assumed that my grades would speak for themselves. So every year they had the career fair, and really the first 2 years or so, maybe even 3 years, I didn't pay much attention to it. I thought to myself, I'll eventually go to the career fair, and when I do, I'll just carry around my resume, and once they see my amazing GPA, they're bound to just take me in for a job. And I did that. My first job fair. I went from place to place, and I just, don't want to bother you, just gonna leave my resume right over here. call me, my number's there. You're going to be begging to hire me. And it was really just the complete opposite. I think I must have given my resume out to like 15 different companies, and maybe 2 of them I actually got interviews for. One of them, I had a really nice conversation. We just like spoke a lot, and that manifested into an interview. Another one, I knew the person who was on the other side. She used to be in my class and she was a year older, and she was now recruiting. So she put in a good word for me. And I didn't realize how important both of those aspects really were. The fact that I had a really good conversation with someone, and the fact that I knew the person who was conducting the interviews. Again, I took for granted the fact that I had a high GPA. I thought that was it, but I really learned the importance of networking, establishing a relationship. There's so much more than just the actual technical skills that you showcase on a resume, or in my case, on just a GPA, a transcript. And in many ways, these things can be fudged, especially with a resume. Anyone can be putting whatever they want in their resume. As someone who's now been on the other end of me hiring dozens and dozens of finance and accounting professionals, the resume is one of the last things that I actually pay a close attention to. Now, it's probably like I need someone to have a certain level of background or experience or years of experience in the field. That's important, but where I really place the majority of the actual value when I hire someone is how well we could actually talk with one another, and a bunch of other areas that, again, I realized through this experience I was missing out on. So that was the first time that I went to the career fair. By the time that I went the next year, I did it completely differently. I met each and every single person the year before, so the year after I already knew each person, and I went in, I shook their hand, I saw them maybe at other events, other on-campus like presentations that they were doing, and they started to really get to know me. And little by little, I started getting more and more interviews. And I eventually learned that one of the most important things in interviewing, this is specifically with the Big Four, which is where I eventually got a job, but really in any job, they want to see your personality. They want to understand, A, what is it going to be like when I put this person in front of a client, if you're working in client services, or in front of other team members. When it's 2 a.m. and we've been really busy trying to figure something out and we're going to be here another 3 hours, are you going to be the type of person that's losing it, or are you going to be a positive person on the rest of your team? Are people going to actually enjoy working with you? So that was really eye-opening for me in my experience. And it's something that I always tell people who are in college. Try to go to as many events as possible. Try to get to know the people on the other side, the recruiters, send follow-up emails, thank you. There's so much more than just your resume. So eventually I was fortunate enough to get a job at one of the Big Four. It actually started off as an internship. So what's really common is you'll do an internship at one of these big places, and if things work out, they'll offer you a job for 1 year later. So I did 4 years undergrad, and then I was going to do a 5th year in order to get my CPA and get a master's degree. And the internship was a ton of fun. I was so grateful. It was such like a burden lifted off of my shoulders getting this internship, because I knew all I needed to do was not mess it up, and hopefully then I would get a full-time job. And they really pampered us on the internship. It was so much fun. I remember once they rented out Yankee Stadium, and they took us on a boat with unlimited alcohol and just unlimited food. They really did pamper us. We didn't really do too much work, but I got to meet the people around me, and I got to see how they enjoyed their job, and they all seemed pretty happy. And I thought to myself, man, this is pretty sweet. And I was grateful that at the end, they offered me a full-time position. So I was in this incredible opportunity where I did an internship, I had a full-time offer. In 1 year, I was going to return. And now this last year, I could really spend on getting my CPA. And I was fortunate because oftentimes when you're working with a big company, they'll sponsor the testing fees for you getting your CPA license. And they'll also give you a nice bonus if you pass it all within a certain time frame. So I definitely took advantage of both of those. And that 5th year, I really just focused the entire time on getting my CPA license. So I was crazy obsessed of having a really high GPA before I actually got to my 5th year. And by the time I got to my 5th year and I already knew I had a job, I didn't really care so much about my GPA. I think I actually got a 26 on one of my exams once, which made me think okay, maybe I need to pay a little bit more attention. I still need to get a passing grade. But I really just took that time to study for the CPA. And a lot of times people have asked me, hey, do you think the CPA exam is worth it? Should I really focus on the CPA? And I have kind of mixed feelings about the CPA exam, because on the one hand, it's opened up a lot of opportunities for me in my career. I think it's been great to put on the resume. I think it's been great to just tell someone, hey, I'm a CPA. It builds instantly more credibility. But do I feel more knowledgeable or capable because I got the CPA? Not really. And there are many people who I know, my brother honestly being one of them, who never got the CPA. And I consider my brother in many ways smarter than me. And the fact that he never ended up passing all 4 tests, he tried, but he was already married at that point, he had kids, and just life came in the way. It was a lot more challenging, which is what I see for a lot of other people. I don't really see them as any less capable. And again, I think that has a lot to do with what you can bring to the table in an organization. It's not just a resume, it's not just a GPA, it's actual hard skills, it's the social skills, it's the capabilities to do things in an Excel file, to present things a certain way, to understand the forest beyond the trees. So I took that entire year to study for the CPA exam, and it definitely wasn't easy. It was simple in that all I needed to do was pass these 4 tests. And the 4 tests, I had a review course, which again, I was fortunate enough that my employer was sponsoring for me. And the review course I did Becker, I was a huge fan of. And it's really good the way that they position everything, where you have like a textbook and you have videos and they tell you what to highlight. And all I needed to do was really put in the time in order to pass that exam. And again, I was very fortunate because I had that time to be able to put in. I didn't really have anything going on that year other than just making sure I don't get another 26 on that exam. So I just focused all of my attention on passing the CPA exam. And I remember the first time that I took FAR, financial reporting and regulations. I don't even remember what exactly it stands for. But I was nervous, and I remember studying so much and taking notes and doing everything that I can, and I ended up getting a 90 on my first exam, which was incredible. You really only need a 75 to pass. And I remember I actually told my accounting professor, hey, I got a 90, and he said, you definitely overstudied for that one. But it gave me the confidence that I just needed to put in the time and the work, and I'd have the rest of my year to really think for that. And I think that a lot of employers value the CPA exam because, again, that signaling that it sends, hey, this is a standardized test that I put in the time and effort. I was able to follow these instructions and actually pass this exam. It really does open up a lot of doors and opportunities. So as I got the CPA out of the way, I graduated with my master's degree in accounting. I was ready to hit the world. I was ready for my very first ever job. And I was going to prove to the world who I was, and I was going to do amazing things. Or at least that is what I told myself. See, in Big Four, when you take a position, there are really only 3 paths that you go in: audit, tax, or advisory. Advisory is more like on consulting, and you can have an accounting degree and go into advisory, but that's not as common, I found. It's a lot more common that you go under audit or tax. And when you go the audit route, you generally are reviewing financial records of other companies. You're following audit procedures, you're ticking and tying. And that didn't really speak to me as much, but I didn't really know much about what the real world was like. But I knew some people who were working on the tax team, and I liked the practicality of tax because I'd always really considered myself entrepreneurial. And I always dreamed of maybe having my own company one day, which is pretty surreal to just think about now. And I thought tax could be really interesting because I could actually help people understand how much taxes they owe and how to file their taxes. Now, if you're not familiar with the US tax system, or probably any tax system in the world, it's really complicated. I don't know why the governments make it so difficult for you to remit money to them. You would think, like, if you're a business and you want to charge a customer, you want to make it really clear and easy how much money they owe you, and you want to be able to collect that money really easily. Instead, the government has like all these crazy regulations that in many ways you need to hire a professional just to be able to do right. And if you try to do it on your own and you mess something up, which is actually what happened to me this past year, not realizing this is like this special New York City tax that I needed to file, you'll actually get penalties and interest. So taxes, they're like this really challenging area that in many ways, because it's so challenging, is lucrative. So I thought to myself, great, why don't I go ahead and take a career in tax and let's see what will become of it. So that's exactly what I did. I started my career in tax and I was very excited to go ahead and hit the ground running. And at first, again, it was just like that internship. They took us on these different retreats, these different trainings. I got to meet a lot of other people. It was a lot of fun. And then came the time to actually do the work and prove to the world who exactly I was. But the challenge was my group was a little bit overstaffed. And I found out this is actually pretty common with Big Four accounting, where you'll have busy seasons and you'll have not so busy seasons. And when I started, there was a really long, not so busy season. In fact, it must have been like 3-4 months that I was there and I barely did anything all day. I really just sat by my computer and we were all in these like open cubicles. and I just waited for work. Now, sometimes I would get work. It was like a mini project. At most, it would take me like an hour or something. It was never like a really fully staffed thing. Some people in my year were already getting staffed on things, but it was all kind of like a luck of the draw type of thing. And the challenge was when you're sitting and doing nothing and going into an office, it's not like you can watch Netflix or go to the gym or something and just be like, hey, call me whenever you have work and I'll be here. They expect you to, in essence, like be at your desk and be ready for work. The things that you can do in the meanwhile, like you could look up the like company trainings that they have, but I always found that they were like so difficult to relate to and so like scripted, and just like the context of being able to actually like do something on a project, they never really resonated with me. So in many ways, I just spent days and days and weeks and honestly months, even months, just doing absolutely nothing. And I asked myself, is this really what it was all for? All these years in school, 18 years, 20, 21 years of my life in school. Is this what it all led up to? But I told myself, be patient. Resource planning is not easy. Let's see kind of where this goes. So instead of me getting staffed on projects related to tax and accounting, instead I got put on a different team that was related to advisory. And that team was actually traveling in Chicago. We spent 2 months in Chicago and then 2 months in Milwaukee. And they were doing advisory work for a really large bank in verifying bank records and making sure that interest that the bank was charging to certain members who were in the Army was in line with certain benefits that Army members are allowed to receive. So I was excited to do this project. I thought it cool, great, I could actually travel. But a few weeks in, I realized the work was really mundane. In fact, I didn't feel like anything related to all the schooling that I did that led up to this, the CPA exam, was really coming in handy with the work that I was doing. I felt like anyone who didn't even have an accounting degree was able to do this work that I was doing. And it's challenging when you first join a job, you're right out of school, you have to kind of prove yourself. I didn't really want to be doing this work. I wasn't really interested in this work. This work didn't really tie into any of my future plans. But what could I do? Be that guy who complains and maybe even gets laid off or fired for not being a team sport? So I took those 4 months while I was traveling to really just do my best and suck it up and be on this engagement. And I gotta be honest, it was pretty miserable. I remember it was like super cold. It was really dark out. I didn't know anyone, and there were like hundreds of people on this engagement that had been there for months before me, so they all knew each other, and I was kind of having difficulty in just like forming relationships and friendships, and I was in this depressing hotel, and people may have looked at me and be like, wow, Josh, this is incredible. You're working for the Big Four, or like you should be so grateful. But I was like, this isn't really what I signed up for. This isn't really building my career. I'm not really enjoying this. And it was then that I learned a few important things outside of one's career. Now, your career is a huge part of your life, there's no doubt about it. But your mental health is such an important aspect that's tied to a lot of different areas outside of just your career. And one of the biggest things for me has really been exercise. So when I first joined that project, I traveled, I was in Chicago, and my entire routine was kind of spun upside down. And I went a few weeks without exercising, and that was the first time that I really felt this lack, this anxiety was building in me. That once I started exercising again on this project, I found a local CrossFit, and I would go in the morning. It was actually a lot of fun. Some great memories from that CrossFit. But once I started exercising, that stress that I was just carrying, that burden, all of a sudden just got lifted from me. And I realized that with exercise and fitness, there's this certain anxiety that it can break, that nothing else in the world can actually break. So if you're working, if you're not active, if you don't have the opportunity to get as much exercise as you wish, I really do encourage you to consider placing more of an emphasis on that, because it's going to pay yourself back in ways that can't even imagine. And it wasn't just exercise, it was also diet. I was always used to just eating whatever, while my metabolism was high. But I also noticed that after I ate certain things, I'd feel bloated for the whole day. And let me tell you something, trying to work when you feel bloated and just bleh, it's a lot more challenging than if you just feel healthy. So I started eating more salads, again, paying more attention to my fitness, and naturally, I started to feel better. But in addition to the fitness and diet, again, I tried to really have a life outside of work. And it was challenging for me because all my friends were back at home. I was in this random city in Chicago for 2 months and then Milwaukee for 2 months. It was cold, it was dark, and I didn't really have much to do. I found this online service that taught Spanish via live native professionals one-on-one via Skype. This was before Zoom and Google Meets was a thing. And I thought it was so cool to be able to learn a new language with someone virtually. And I thought to myself, my God, this is gonna revolutionize education. And I started taking these Spanish lessons, and it was very affordable because my teacher was in Central America, and I was learning so much. I took Spanish in high school physically, but mentally, I can't really tell you if I remember too much from that. But when I was taking these Spanish lessons directly with this person who I was also developing a relationship with, I found that I was becoming so much more fluent, so much more quickly. I was amazed at my progress. So after 4 months, the project wrapped up, and finally I was returned back to the New York office. And this time I was staffed on new projects. This was finally my time to show the world who I was and how amazing of an accounting professional I was going to be. There was just one problem. See, I didn't realize, but taxes are actually really boring. Okay, maybe for some of you, you may get excited by taxes. For whatever reason, I do not find them exciting at all. But what's even more so is there are so many detailed rules and regulations, and those rules and regulations are constantly changing. And I'm so not the type of person that cares about focusing on those details, reading something 100 times, circling words. Like, I can never be like a lawyer and just like reading technical text. I need numbers. I need things to like make sense right then and there. That's just the way that I personally am hardwired. So I didn't realize, but I was a really poor tax professional. And on top of that, I really didn't get along with the team that I was working with. There were a few people that were my year who I was like friends with, and that was nice. But for the most part, I was surrounded with people who were 1 year above me. It was a really large graduating class that year. And they were all really close with each other. They would all day joke around, have fun, create this really great environment for themselves. But I was always kind of like that guy in the middle of them. And like anytime I tried to insert myself and develop a relationship, it was just like very cliquey, and it was really tough to just like break in and feel like I had coworkers that I actually enjoyed being around. I didn't necessarily have anything against them, but I also just didn't really bond so much with them. I didn't really click with them. And it was then that I realized how important it is to be in a job where you actually enjoy the people that you're working with. I'd even go so far as to say, I would rather be in a meh job that I didn't really find so exciting, whatever, with like amazing people that I enjoyed being around all the time, that I was like cracking up with, that I wanted to hang out with on the weekend and show to my other friends and all that. I'd rather have a job like that than this incredible, fulfilling, amazing job with miserable people to work with. Now, again, both extremes are not good. You generally want a job where you enjoy what you do and with it being with good people. But I really underestimated how big of an impact not only the people that you work with, but also the culture in a place. Just the way people carry themselves, the way that they dress, the way that they act. Are people kind? Do they encourage leadership and thought-provoking discussions and all that? That's all part of a really huge culture that I've thought of myself a ton as I've eventually built out my accounting firm. So I had this issue. I wasn't good into taxes. I didn't enjoy it. They knew that I wasn't good at it, and I didn't really get along with my team. What exactly is a person to do whenever that happens? Well, they pretty much picked up on it just like I did. And coincidentally, at this same time, a friend of mine had gotten married and his wife was from Guatemala. So they were living in Guatemala. He's also from New York, and I knew him from childhood. And he was learning Spanish lessons as well. And he was learning with a live professional. And he was texting me saying, my God, I'm learning so much so quickly. This is so cool. And we both came up with this idea, hey, why don't we start a business? Why don't we find people overseas, pair them with people who want to learn a language? We'll start with Spanish, we'll then move to other languages, then we'll move to other subjects, and we'll capitalize on this new revolution that we believe is coming, where people will be able to learn one-on-one via video chat. And this friend of mine, Judah is his name. We were really great friends. I always really respected the head that he had on his shoulders. Really, really smart guy. And I thought to myself, my God, the opportunity to start a business with Judah, that would be so exciting. At the same time, I was really unhappy at my job. So it was the perfect opportunity for me to leave and go off on my own. And right before I decided to go off on my own, the head partner called me into their office. And she said, Josh, I gotta be honest, the reviews that we got, the feedback, they aren't really the best. We're gonna give you two options. This other team that you've been working with a little bit, it was like a funds team, I was in the banking team. You could work with them and they're willing to take you. Or you could leave, we'll give you a severance of about 2 months pay and we'll just consider this as, not the right experience for both of us and just go our separate ways. And I already knew at that point that I wanted to go off on my own. So it was a no-brainer that I was going to just take the severance and get a little bit of extra income. But no, it's a little bit of like just indignant of like, why didn't this work out for me? You know, I studied so hard. I passed the CPA exam on my first time. I got this really high GPA. I was top of my class. My very first job out of college, like, well, what went wrong? And she told me something I'll never forget. She said, you know, I want you to really think to yourself, are you destined to be an accountant? Is accounting right for you? And she said, I've seen a lot of people in my career, a ton of them, and I've really come to understand that there's the right side of the brain and the left side of the brain. And some people are better on the right side and better on the left side. Now, I don't remember which side of the brain does what. I think one side is more for like analytical thinking and the other is for more just like creativity and all that. And I think what she was trying to say is like, hey, I see you as more of this type of creative person and maybe accounting is not really the right field for you. So I took that as a lesson as, okay, accounting really is not the right field for me. I chose the wrong major, but you know what? That doesn't matter anymore. Because now I'm going to start a business and now I'm finally going to be able to show the world who I am and what I'm all about. So that's exactly what we did. We started our company. We were called Spanish Virtually. I left my job maybe around like September or October. And we were so excited. We spent months working with a developer to build the website. I remember it was December 31st. Let me think of the exact year. It must have been 2014. Wow. Almost a decade ago. That was when we officially launched. And let me tell you, there was so much excitement, but also so many lessons that I had to learn the hard way being a first-time entrepreneur. See, I had this idea that as long as I was hardworking enough, I can create a company that defies the odds of 9 out of 10 businesses fail in their very first year. I could reach this success and again, show the world what I was made of. But there were so many assumptions that I had never validated that only through this job, I had then eventually started to validate, and it was a lot more challenging than I realized. So first, we launched on December 31st. I announced to the entire world. I posted on Facebook at the time when that was like still the main social media platform. I posted that we had just launched. I told everyone in my network. I told everyone in my family. I was so excited for it. And nothing really happened. Our website went live. We were willing to give a free Spanish lesson. No questions, no credit card, just join, sign up for a free Spanish lesson. We'll pair you with a teacher and then you could sign up afterwards. And it was like pulling teeth just to try to get people to take that very first Spanish lesson. And I was just like shaking my head like, what is it? If this is free, well, what am I missing over here? But again, it was one of the many lessons in business that I had to actually learn the hard way. And before I went off on my own, before I decided to take this leap into being a business owner, I again consulted a lot of people, just like I consulted a lot of people in becoming an accountant. I consulted a lot of people with the idea of me leaving my job and instead doing this risky business. And I got a lot of advice. Some people said, hey, you should really stick at your current job. This is a great opportunity. You'd be able to grow in a few years to a manager, senior, eventually a partner or whatever. But a lot of other people were saying, no, this is actually the opportunity to go off on your own and to start your own business. And the best advice that I probably received is from a close friend of mine's dad. He was asking me, okay, how much money are you making? And okay, well, tell me about this business and all that. And I told him how much money I was making at the time. And he said, it's not a lot of money, right? I thought to myself, it's not. I thought it was pretty good. And he said, no. He said, to me, this is really a no-brainer. You should absolutely pursue this business because of where you are in your life. Right now, you're young. I was maybe, 24 at the time, 25. He said, you don't have a family, you don't have a mortgage, you can go home and move back home and move in with your parents. Go out and try to make your success. If things don't work, you have an accounting master's degree, you have a CPA, you have Big Four experience. You can go and get another job. Now is the opportunity to take this risk. Now is the opportunity to soak up this learning experience because you won't always have that experience later on. And again, going back to the example with my brother, he already had a family and the opportunity that he had for passing the CPA exam, it was so much more challenging for him because he had so many other things going on in his life. But this advice to me to take advantage of my youth and take that risk because I can afford to take that risk when I'm young. When I have a family, when I have a mortgage that I need to pay, I can't necessarily afford to take that risk. That was one of the best pieces of advice that I had gotten. Okay, so we had our company, we had this dream of getting big, and it took a really long time for us to start to get traction. I remember there were days where we didn't even know what to do. We knew that we had to stay busy, but we didn't know what to do, where to focus on in the business. And I remember one day we just spent hours indexing different stock images, even though we later on realized you could just search for a stock image and get it. But we didn't know what to do. We just needed a way to stay busy. And I remember another day I had called every mid school in America to try to get them to get their students to use our service. And that was my first real experience with like cold calling. And I just thought, hey, as long as I just keep calling these companies, I should be able to land a few of those clients. And a lot of those companies never answered the phone. And the ones that did answer the phone said, I don't know if I'm really so interested in this. And the ones who did say that they were interested in it didn't really follow up to my emails. And the one who did follow up with my emails and they tried it, it didn't have this huge effect that we were looking for where all of a sudden our business was going to grow. Maybe a few students tried a few lessons, but the effort that I put into calling each and every single one of these people, I was like so burnt out with how much I was working. It was a very hard lesson with business development. And this is a big thing that I got wrong with my first entrepreneurial experience. See, when I went off on my own this first time, I didn't have any clients. I didn't even have a fully fleshed out business model. We didn't have a website up and running. I just left my job because I was miserable and I thought I'll go ahead and figure it out myself. But without this safety net of actually having clients, of actually having a repeatable business, actual product market fit, as a lot of startups will call it, you're in essence in this valley of death where you only have a certain amount of runway until you need to make enough money that you just determine, I can't continue with this. I need to do something else, which is eventually what happened to us. We literally didn't make money. We spent 2 years doing this company and we didn't make any money at all. And it was so debilitating. Those 2 years, it was so challenging. I just felt like I was in this escalator that was going up, but it was coming down and I was trying to go up it and it just like felt like impossible. Like I was really like just pulling teeth all day, trying to get even the smallest traction. And sometimes we'd get a little bit of traction. We tried like Google ads and we got a little bit of customers through there. And all of a sudden a customer bought a few $100s worth of services for us. We go, oh my God, this is incredible. And it was this huge, just like roller coaster in my life. And it was just a challenging time in general in my life because I already had my first failed job, as I would say, out of school. And I'd moved back home with my parents, so my social life wasn't really so amazing. I wasn't really making money. I was trying to date at the time also. And all of these things were just like hitting me at once. And probably one of the biggest challenges was no one really told me when you first graduate the challenges that you experience. They call it like now I read eventually, it was like the quarter life crisis. How when you're like 25, you're coming out of like student debt. I had like, 30, 40,000 in student debt at the time. You don't really know what you want to do. There's a good chance that your first job didn't really work out. And if it does work out, you're kind of doing all the grunt work on the very bottom. And you're balancing your checkbook for the first time. You may be living at home. Your social life is taking a hit. And it's just like a big adjustment from when you're in school. And I felt like I was on top of the world in college. And that was one of the biggest challenges. It's just like a dark period in my life. But thankfully, I loved my co-founder. And I was very grateful that another close friend of mine, after a year into our journey, saw what we were doing. And he was also interested in joining. And we welcomed him to the team. So it was the three of us. And I always told myself I would never work with such smart people in my life. And I felt so grateful for that opportunity. And I was loving what we were doing so much. But quite frankly, it didn't really love me back. And again, it was this roller coaster where we eventually got accepted to this accelerator out in Texas. And I got paired with this one mentor and he taught me a ton about just like business development and prospecting and how to do things like cold outbound to be able to reach prospects and get them on the phone and close these big business deals. These were things that for the first time I got to actually experience through this accelerator and through me just, again, continuing to hustle and trying to figure out with our startup. And it resulted in a few $1,000s here, a few $1,000s there, but for the most part, we just put it back into the business. Again, we went all 2 years, we didn't even pull out any money. And after that 2-year experience, we eventually got to the point where we just decided, hey, we can't continue. We need to be making money. This just isn't the right path for us. We believed in what we were doing. We believed that there was this opportunity to totally revolutionize education by pairing you with live professionals. I still believe that, one day we're gonna have glasses on via AI, VR, that you can connect with someone all around the world and really feel like you're in virtual reality and learn something. But for whatever reason, the path that we were on wasn't really working out. So I was then in this really tough position where I didn't really know what I was going to do in my career. The first 2 years of my career, in many ways, I felt like we're a failure. I didn't really enjoy taxes. I wasn't good at it. I didn't enjoy the people that I worked with. I didn't like the corporate culture. I was convinced that I wasn't an accountant. I chose the wrong major. The second career, the next 2 years, I really enjoyed it, but it didn't really love me back. I wasn't able to make a living from it. And I thought to myself, what am I going to do next? I don't want to go back to accounting. I want to continue and grow my own company, but I don't know how to do it. And my mom was there the whole time telling me, you should really give accounting another shot. And I just rolled my eyes like many kids would do to their mother and say, Mom, you don't know what you're talking about. You just don't understand. I'm not an accountant. Left brain, right brain. Don't you know how these things work? And she kept saying, no, maybe you were just in the wrong place. Maybe you were just working in the wrong field. And it's difficult for me to say this, Mom. If you're watching this, please don't gloat too much. But she was absolutely right. Mothers really do know best. Accounting is such an amazing field. There's so much opportunity with accounting. In fact, this is one of my favorite posts that I've ever done, 77 different types of accounting. I thought to myself when I first started that accounting was just audit and tax. In reality, the field is so much bigger than that. There's FP&A, which is my favorite, forecasting, and there's the controller side of things. There's the accounting operational side of things. And then there are different industries that you can go in. There are different cultures and companies. Like, there are so many different amazing opportunities in accounting. And I didn't realize this at the time. I eventually realized it as I came across a job post for an accountant at a venture capital firm. Now, if you're not familiar, venture capital is pretty much synonymous with startups. VCs, which is a short version of venture capital, they invest in startups. And this company was a venture capital firm that had their own accounting agency as part of the venture capital firm. They eventually kind of spun out into their own agency, but they were doing the accounting work for these startups. And I thought, my God, this would be so cool. I could blend my background as a CPA, with my master's in accounting and all the accounting knowledge that I gained in school. And I can now apply this to startups, and I could learn what exactly was I missing, and I could learn from these amazing CEOs. And I was so fortunate to get this job. There was just one problem. The job was paying me less money than I was making from my first job out of college working at the Big Four. And this was a really tough pill for me to swallow. And again, I remember going to my uncle and saying, hey, I'm not sure what to do. I have these two jobs. One job is paying me $10,000 more. This other job is less, and it's even less money that I was making out of college. What do you suggest? And he said, I think you just explained to me what I suggest. I said, what do you mean? He said, I could tell how much more excited you are about this other job. Don't worry, it's $10,000 less. Focus on the learning opportunity here, on the experience, because if you could really soak that up, the entire career you'll just get amazing dividends from that experience. And he really couldn't have been more right. I spent 2.5 years at this VC firm that eventually spun out into this accounting agencies, and I was meeting one-on-one with these CEOs who had raised millions, some of them tens of millions of dollars, some of them with successful exits in other companies that they've had before. And I was meeting with them one-on-one. I was doing everything related to their books. I was doing their bookkeeping, classifying their transactions, booking and adjusting journal entries. I was paying their vendors, organizing their accounts payable function. I was invoicing their customers and making sure that they were getting paid. I was processing their payroll. I was coordinating their taxes. Even though I didn't like doing the taxes myself, I was still helping them make sure their taxes were being filed. But most importantly, my favorite area, I got introduced to financial planning and analysis. Now, if you've never worked in FP&A, financial planning analysis, or if you're interested in it, let me just tell you, it is by far my favorite field. It is so much fun being able to create a forecast and track against that forecast and present that forecast and explain your reasoning for why you think the company is going to grow in this way and be able to actually validate that and sit in on board meetings. This was the first time that I had the opportunity to do all of these things, and I loved it. I soaked up every single opportunity. I worked my butt off. In fact, I remember this one time the CEO emailed me at 10 p.m. saying, hey, I have this important meeting tomorrow. Can you do XYZ for me? It was like a spreadsheet I needed to edit. And I told him, hey, my computer is actually in the office. I can't really do this right now. I said, it's a pity because I have this important stuff. Okay, I understand. I said, you know what? I'm gonna go to the office right now. And I remember in New York City at 10 p.m. biking to the office, getting to the office with literally a smile on my face and handing in this report. Because you see, unlike Big Four, where I was doing just one specific thing, I was working in global banking, financial services, taxes, doing tax returns for these huge banks. I didn't really see what was the outcome of it. Now I was working directly with the CEO. I understood this CEO was meeting with the board of directors. He needed to present this plan that was dependent on the work that I was doing. And that's one of the reasons why I love working with small companies so much more than large corporate companies. With small companies, you oftentimes get exposed to so much more of the big picture of things. You get to do all the different areas of finance and accounting, which is what I was doing. You get to work directly with the stakeholders. You get to see the actual impact of the work that you're doing. So it was just totally incredible experience for me. And about 2 years in, I reached out to people in my network just mentioning, hey, just so you're aware, I offer these fractional CFO services. I wasn't really ready to call myself a fractional CFO because I was still a little bit early in my career and there was still a lot of confidence that I needed to gain. But I had learned so much and I felt comfortable that I could really do this on my own. And I felt like in many ways, The job that I had taken was really great and I learned a lot, but now it was holding me back. And I felt like the entrepreneurial bug had bitten me again and I wanted to go off on my own. But I wasn't gonna make that same mistake that I made the first time. I wasn't gonna go off on my own and risk not having an income. I was living in New York City with my friends. I was enjoying it. I didn't wanna move back home with my parents at the time. I told myself, if I'm gonna go off on my own, this time I need to have a book of business. I need to have some sort of assurance that I can continue so I could focus on the bigger things rather than just stressing constantly about where exactly my next paycheck is going to come from. So I started doing a little bit of consulting on the side. Thankfully, my work contract didn't say anything that I couldn't do this on the side. And I started working with this one company where I just built them a financial model. And eventually the head of FP&A went on maternity leave. And I started doing more and more work for them. I would work on nights and weekends, and I would in essence put in 60, sometimes even 80 hours in the week where I would do 40, 50 hours with my normal job and then another 20, 30 hours with this other job. And I really developed an amazing relationship with them. And eventually it came to the point where they said, Josh, we want to bring you in. Here's the deal. We don't really have a need for someone full-time. We really just need you at like 20 hours a week or so. And I told them, this could actually work out pretty well. If you take me on for 20 hours, they told me that they were willing to pay me a certain rate, and that rate was actually the equivalent of what I was making with my current job at 40 hours a week. So I thought to myself, okay, well, this is a no-brainer. But I also thought to myself, well, what's gonna happen if I take this job and I'm gonna be a contractor? With an employee, it's a little bit more permanent. With a contractor, I could just get fired. I told them, listen, I'll go off, I'll join you, but you have to guarantee me a 7-month contract till the end of the year. And they thought about it, and they came back to me and they said, okay, you got it. And I thought to myself, my God, this company is paying me the same amount that I'm working at this other company for each month, working half the time, and they are guaranteeing my contract for 7 months. Now, I did say that when you're working as an employee, it's a little bit more permanent, but still it's an employment at will. They could technically fire you at any point with or without cause. This company, I had a contract legally. I was going to get paid this 7-month amount, which was incredible. So in many ways, it was the opposite of the risk that I took when I started my first company. To go off and create this consulting agency, which I eventually called Mighty Digits, it was less risk, and it was even less risk than me staying at my full-time job. So I put in my 2-week notice, I started my career, I created the company, Mighty Digits, I filed for an LLC, and the rest is really history. Now, I'm gonna tell you some really big learnings that I gathered from Mighty Digits, and I'm gonna tell you a little bit about my journey and then posting content as well. So when I started Mighty Digits, again, I just had this one client and I told them, listen, I'm gonna try to find some other clients. And they said, sure, as long as you do our 20 hours, that's totally fine. So right from day one, I thought to myself, I can't let this contract end without having any other clients. And this was the first time that I really got to pluck a fruit from that tree that I had spent so long planting with my very first company. And that was the dividends, the learnings I was able to call upon. So I knew that I needed to find clients in order to make it last in this company and to avoid putting all my eggs in one basket with this one client. So what I did was I went straight to an outbound campaign. Again, I had experience with Spanish virtually. It was eventually called Skill Silo, the first company, where I did an outbound campaign and I actually closed contracts where I cold emailed people, told them about my business, got on a sales call, and ended up actually working with them. So right from day one, that's exactly what I did. I would start emailing startups, telling them who I was, having some sort of research in the email saying, hey, I researched your company. I see that you guys can do X, Y, Z. And I actually picked up my first few clients that way. Eventually, I grew to maybe picking up 5 or 10 so clients that I started even hiring other people on my team. The first person that I hired was like a part-time contractor, and I couldn't guarantee her hours, and I paid her hourly. It was honestly like pretty awkward, to be honest, but I went very, very carefully. And little by little, I continued to grow the business. And as I did more outbound, I also started getting more referrals because this is a huge referral business. Again, it's so much about people in your actual job, who you know, who is in your network. It's one of the most powerful things that you can invest in. So as I started growing the company more and more, COVID hit. And when COVID hit, that initial contract that I had eventually went bye-bye, along with 20 to 30% of the rest of the company. Now, if I didn't have all those learnings from that very first experience of being an entrepreneur, I would have most likely just fallen flat. I may have even had to gone back and get another job. But because from day one, I took all those failures, I bypassed, I didn't do all those cold callings again, all those other methods that didn't work. I did a specific example of outbound. That was just one of the sales strategies that I did. I was able to build this huge book of business that allowed me to just streamline a lot of the lessons that I first learned in my initial business. It's been a huge roller coaster growing Mighty Digits to the company that we are now at after 5 years. Like I mentioned, we're 15 people working with 35 to 40 different startups. I am so grateful for this opportunity. It is so much fun. And I'm just, again, so grateful to even be a business owner and be able to provide an income now for other people. It's so surreal. It's really like a pinch me moment. But the real pinch me moment came in April of 2022. I was working with a coach and he was pushing me to start producing content. And I thought to myself, oh, that could really be interesting. Why not go ahead and give that a try? So I chose LinkedIn as my channel and I started posting content thinking, maybe this will take off. Maybe I'll actually drive some more business into Mighty Digits. And as you can imagine, it didn't really have much of a reaction. In fact, I probably spent about 6 months posting every single day different tidbits on finance and accounting, hoping that I would catch people's attention, and it just didn't really stick. It didn't really resonate. Until one day I saw someone else, my friend Paul, post content on financial modeling and financial modeling software and important considerations. And I just remember looking at that post and thinking to myself, like, wow, this is so, there's so much education in this post, and he's not even like trying to sell anything. He's just trying to like educate people. And when I really understood that point, along with a bunch of other lessons, I probably need to make a whole another video of the things that I learned for producing content, but that's when it really started to click for me. And I think right around then was when I started to really gain traction and people started to actually show their appreciation and the fact that it was actually resonating, the content that I was sharing around finance and accounting. And from there, it's really just been a wild ride. I'm literally, as we speak, about to cross 400,000 followers on LinkedIn. If you're watching me right now on YouTube, we're at about 9,000 followers, which is also really cool. We have a daily newsletter of about 90,000 people every day reads our they don't necessarily all read it, but have a good like 35% open rate. It's wild how many people have been paying attention to the content that I've actually been producing. And I've really come to understand and appreciate that throughout this entire journey, there have been so many amazing experiences that I've had, so many lessons that I've learned, so many things that I've learned the hard way that hopefully I'm helping other people now see things differently and not make those same mistakes and go down the same path that I've made. And the fact that I get to just produce content every day for so many people, to hear every day people sending me emails or messages saying like, this is really great, I appreciated this helped me out a ton, just reading their personal stories. It is just like an outer body type of experience. And I'm just so grateful for that. So I consider myself right now on this journey still very, very early into all of this. I have so much more plans for my career, for my content, for this YouTube channel, and I'm so grateful that you're here with me. I actually started a third business, so YourCFO Guy is our second business. We have a few people who help me every single day with the content, and that's been amazing. Our third business is called Model Wiz, and that's probably the one I'm most excited about. We offer templates in Excel directly via plugin. You can customize them. By the end of this year, we're hoping you can connect it to your accounting software, develop some beautiful dashboards, and really just take control of your financial reporting. So it's been a wild journey that I've been on in my career. It's been ups, it's been downs, but it's really helped me understand that everything was really a learning experience. And I'm so grateful that I put in the hard work, and I'm still putting in the hard work. I still work crazy hours, but I'm so grateful that even though I didn't have the immediate success in the first 2 jobs or career opportunities that I pursued, I still learned so much. I learned what I liked and what I didn't like. And going back to just thinking of that partner when I was in the office and she said, there are people with the right side of the brain and the left side of the brain. And you strike me as someone who's more on the creative side. Ask yourself, do you really want to be an accountant? And I just find it so interesting that after all these years, accounting in many ways was my calling. And I'm a total nerd when it comes to all this. I love it. I built an audience of over 400,000 people just talking about this each and every single day, but it's not in the traditional way. It's not in just the give me your numbers and I'll be a bean counter and add this together and tell you what form to file it on. It's in really looking at it from a completely different angle. So my advice to you, if you're feeling stuck in your career, if you're not sure if accounting is to you, recognize that there are a lot of incredible opportunities, different fields, different industries, different company types. Don't just throw it away. Don't make that mistake that I was about to make in my career. And take each opportunity as a learning experience and recognize that you're planting seeds. And even if that tree doesn't grow as big as you want, you'll still be able to eventually get fruits from that experience if you just keep on learning. I wish you a huge amount of success. I wish you a much easier time than I have had in my career and even more success. And I so much appreciate you following along on this journey and can't wait to continue as time progresses. Thanks so much for tuning in, and I'll see you guys next time.